Hi everybody, it's Mena. Welcome back to my channel, or if this is the very first video that you're seeing of me, then welcome to my channel. Please be sure to hit the subscribe button down below if you didn't already. I post every day except for Tuesday and Friday afternoon sometimes. And today in this video, I'm going to go over the top 10 things you should never do in a hospital. So these are things that are not appropriate to do when you're staying in the hospital, or if you're visiting someone in the who's staying in a room in the hospital. It's always good to be on your best behavior when you go to visit people, or if you're going to stay in a hospital at all. And these are all like the things that are not appropriate to do. So I'm gonna get started, and I hope you guys learned something from this video. So number one on my list would have to be loud. So you never want to be loud in a hospital just because there's other people trying to sleep and get better. And it's not really a good thing to be loud in a hospital. And I'm going to be fairly honest. I accidentally was loud in a hospital room once by accident, because I was excited because my aunt and grandpa were visiting me in the hospital. And I was talking a little too loud, and I forgot I had to keep my voice down, because sometimes I get very loud when I'm excited. Right? But it happens. So a good tip is, if you're even if you're in like a single room by yourself, it's kind of a good idea to kind of like not be so loud, because you don't want to disturb the other people that are staying in the hospital. Number two on my list would have to be have the TV on too loud. So you never want to have the TV on too loud, because other people are trying to sleep in the hospital, and not everybody can sleep with a really loud TV on. And I have a story about how I had a hospital roommate who had her TV on too loud, and also her mom was on her phone too loud. And I will link the story down below, and it's called My Rudest Hospital Roommate Story. Number three on my list had to be complain about your roommates. Now, this is really rude. So if you're staying in a hospital and you're sharing a room with someone, it's not really polite to complain about your roommates, because you can hurt their feelings, and they're there to stay in the hospital too. The hospital's not just for you, it's for your roommate, for other people as well. And I understand sometimes when you have roommates that are making a lot of noise, it can be quite frustrating to sleep. But you also have to remember they're probably in pain too, because they might have had a certain surgery, they might have had a certain issue, so they're staying in the hospital the same reason as you. So you never want to complain about your roommates so that they can hear it. It's not okay, and you can hurt their feelings. And then it's also kind of rude. Number four on my list would have to be run in the hospital. So you never want to run in the hospital, because it's kind of dangerous, because you could pull out your cords if you have some IVs in you, and also you may trip and fall. So you never want to run when you're in the hospital. It's not really a good thing to run in a hospital, because you can also bump into somebody who might fall over and they can't get up, and it's just very dangerous. Even if you're wearing the socks with like the skid marks on them, and which is a good thing, because they have you wear those when you're walking around in the hospital. You can't really wear regular shoes when you're in a hospital unless you're a visitor. Or I don't know, it's kind of weird. It doesn't really make any sense, but you never really want to run in a hospital, because it's not safe to do that. Number five on my list would have to be rude to the nurses. So you never want to be rude to the nurses, because they're there to take care of you, they're there to help you, and they're there to make sure you they nurse you back to health. So you should always be nice to the nurses in the hospital. Just because they're doing you a favor and trying to keep you alive. Number 6 on my list would have to be tell someone to be quiet when they're crying in pain. Everybody handles levels of pain differently, and not everybody likes the feeling of being in pain, and in pain whether it's in the arm or if they hit their head or something. So you never want to tell someone to be quiet if they're crying in pain, because not everybody handles pain really well. Some people are in pain so much to the point where they have to cry. And I've definitely been there before. I've been in so much pain to the point where I've had to cry, especially when I went through chemo. So if you're like annoyed by somebody crying, just think about maybe they're in pain. Just don't tell them to be quiet, because it is kind of rude to tell people to be quiet when they're crying, because let me start. It is kind of rude to tell people that they're being quiet because they may be crying because they're in physical pain, and it's not okay to do that, because not everybody handles their level of pain well. Number 7 on my list would have to be make so much noise and wake your roommate. So you never want to do that, because your roommate needs to sleep. And if you're going to make a lot of noise, it's not really considerate for the person you're sharing a hospital room with, and that person needs their sleep to get better, and a lot of people need sleep to get better in a hospital. And I know it is very difficult to sleep in a hospital, because the nurses wake you up constantly to give you medications. I've definitely been there, but you also have to remember that if you're going to be watching TV at night or watch TV super late, you should probably be mindful of how loud you're being when your roommate's trying to sleep, or especially during the day if your roommate's trying to take a nap to get better. Number 8 on my list had to be complain you're bored. So you never want to complain you're bored in a hospital, just because nobody really wants to hear that. It's very rude. And ignore the sound. That's Mr. Pickles barking. I think there's a squirrel in the tree or something. Anyway, so you never want to complain you're bored, because there are things you can do when you're stuck in a hospital. Like you can bring movies to watch. You can bring books to read. There's plenty of things you can do when if you have to be stuck in the hospital. I know I definitely had a lot of things that I could do when I was stuck in the hospital. Like I would bring movies, I would bring something to crochet, I would bring paper to draw, and sometimes the social workers at the hospital would always have crafts and activities for us to do. So there's plenty of things for you to do in the hospital, so then you don't complain you're bored. Or you can bring your laptop with you, so then you can watch YouTube, or you can do whatever you need to do, like some journaling. Number 9 on my list would have to be complain you're cold. So I know it's not really warm in a hospital, like it gets super cold to sleep in a hospital. I know I've definitely been cold when I had to stay in a hospital room. And if you ever get cold, you should always bring extra blankets with you, so then you don't get so cold, so then you don't get freezing cold, because it is quite freezing in a hospital room. I know all about this stuff, and it sucks to be freezing cold in a hospital room, but you should never complain that you're cold. You should always have extra blankets with you, and they always warm up the sheets for you in a hospital, but you never really want to complain about being cold, because people don't really want to hear that in the hospital, because like I said, people are just trying to get better, and if you're complaining about little things, it just annoys your roommate in the hospital. So you should kind of be mindful when you're staying in a hospital, and if you're cold, you should just make sure you come prepared and bring extra blankets, or have them warm up some sheets for you. That's what they definitely can do. Number 10 on my list would have to be use the patient bathroom. This is super important if you're staying in a hospital with your child and you're staying in a hospital room with your child. They need that for the patient, sorry, my tongue is so twisted. So basically, you shouldn't really be using, So basically, you shouldn't be really using the patient bathroom in the hospital room, because that's for the patient so that the nurses can make sure that the patient is healthy by checking their urine. I know that's kind of gross, but they have to do that. And so if you need to use the restroom, you have to use the guest restroom that is in the hallway. I remember, like, anytime my parents needed to use the restroom when they were staying with me at the hospital, they had to use the guest restroom. What sucks is it was all the way at the other end of the hallway in the hospital, but if they had to use the restroom, they couldn't use my restroom because it was only for me and my roommate to use, because they needed to do all the things that needed to be checked to make sure we were healthy. So if they used the restroom, then they probably might have if they used that restroom, they probably might have get confused, like the nurses, and think it's our stuff. But if you ever have to use the restroom and you're staying with like your child, or if you're a visitor visiting a friend in the hospital, you should always use the guest public restroom that they have in the hospital. Don't use the hospital that's in the room. Don't use the hospital that's in the patient's room. I mean, don't use the restroom that's in the patient's room, only just because that's for patients only, so that the hospital can make sure that they're healthy. So always be mindful of that. Okay, so those are my top 10 things you should never do in a hospital. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I post every day except for Tuesday and Friday afternoon sometimes, and I'll see you in another video soon. Bye.